Hello, Guardians. Today is September 22nd, 2023. My name's Danfinity, and welcome to Destiny Digest. Thanks so much for listening to the show. My name's Danfinity. I will be your host for this show, probably always. Today, you have a little bit of a different show. I am currently off gallivanting around Europe and the UK, but, I still wanted to put out some episodes for you guys while I'm away. This week, you get a greatest hits episode. So what I've done with this episode is kind of go in to several different episodes that I remember having really good feelings about during the conversation, and taking those, putting them together, compiling them all in one piece for you to listen to, and I hope that you enjoy them. A quick note, this is a greatest hits of a podcast, and sometimes information gets a little old, so occasionally you will hear viewpoints here that aren't so evergreen, and maybe are tied to a certain season or to a certain issue in the game at the time that it was recorded. But I still felt like there was enough meat on the bone to churn over in conversation that it would be worthwhile to include in this episode. Without any further ado, let's kick things off with Rin Vixen.
Welcome in.
Right.
Thanks so much for joining up with me today. I apologized already earlier in our conversation before recording.
It never happened.
It never happened. As a matter of fact, I'm cutting it out right now. Nobody knows what I'm apologizing for either.
Nope.
So that's all right.
It makes it funnier that way.
We're just going to leave it up in the air. We're just going to leave it up to their imaginations, which, dear God.
What hot tea is behind the fucking curtain?
Oh my God.
Oh.
Somebody will throw this in a twit longer. Anyways, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah. Happy to be.
So, Rin, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Because there's I see the metrics, I see the numbers. Sometimes people don't make it all the way to the end of the episode to find out where people can find you. So
that's true.
Why don't you tell the fine people at home where they can find you on the internet and what you do in the Destiny community?
Well, I mean, Ren_Vixen is the handle. I am literally the only thing that shows up on Google. So if you look that up, it's just, that's me. In terms of what I do, I kind of operate under the idea that if I'm not having fun, I can't expect other people to have fun. So
right.
The majority of what I end up doing is just streaming. And then, I've been dabbling here and there and putting VODs and stuff on YouTube because, the grind and all that shit. But, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I've always operated, is that I just want to put good out into the world and be my stupid self in whatever medium that takes place, on whatever canvas that takes place. And yeah, and in terms of the Destiny side of things, I've always had a bit of an interesting relationship with the game because would
you be a Destiny player any other way?
No. We're tangenting here, but I used to play World of Warcraft for 8 years. I started way fucking back in the day. This is maybe a couple months before Cataclysm came out.
Okay.
And over the years that I played WoW, I competed at the higher end of the rating scene, right? So I was in guilds that would compete within the top 50 world, top 20 US, that kind of high intensity, on the grindstone every single day kind of a thing. And because of the time that I spent in that, I got a taste for the sweatiest of the sweat, right? And I'm telling you right now, there is people think that Crucible sweat lords are sweaty and that PvE sweat lords are sweaty in Destiny. You will never come close to the fucking tracksuit on a bicycle riding for 80 fucking hours straight, pull under your ass cheeks level of sweat that comes from the WoW grind. right? And the way that people kind of approach it. So because I kind of went through that whole process, I got very turned off to the idea of like doing the thing that is the most meta, because that's what I was forced to do for like a long fucking time. And it's one of the reasons why I quit that game, is because I just got tired of it. And so like when I went into Destiny, there was part of my brain that was like, I want to min-max everything. I want to get the best of all the loot, and then, you know, slap it on my character and go ham. But what ended up happening was, over time, I kind of realized that the loot at the end of the day, outside of exotics, because they are like the pinnacle of the loot thing, and they do something profound in the meta, or in the sandbox rather. There is functionally no difference between a Kvostov and a oh my god, I'm having a blank here. Gnawing Hunger. There's effectively no difference. Like, yes, you could argue, oh well, it kills better, it gives you your grenade back, and like you are correct in that fact. But what I'm talking about is when you're going into any activity, right, outside of like excessive build crafting, which as it is now is far better than what it was prior to, you know, the Lightfall changes, as well as the not changes, excuse me, the introduction of Strand, and then also the 3.0 changes to the subclasses prior. There was no functional difference between a Kvostov and a Gnawing Hunger, except it might be able to kill stuff a little bit faster, right? And because there weren't really a lot of utility perks at the time, I lost all sort of care for the high tier cream of the crop, 5 of the 5, you know, god roll chase.
Yeah.
And so because I kind of came at it from that angle, and I've always operated under the idea of I'm going to have fun with this video game, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, Dan, video games are supposed to be fun.
Oh my God. Hold on. Wait a minute. You mean that this pixel world that I've been a part of for like around 7 years, it is supposed to be fun?
Yes. You're supposed to have fun with, I know, it's a wild concept.
Ren, you just changed my entire life.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But yeah, like my whole approach has been like fun first, right? So in addition to that, though, there is a side of accessibility that kind of comes along with the game, especially for newer players.
Yeah.
And when I first started streaming, which is about 2 years ago, my primary thing was doing Destiny, and specifically helping people do things that they haven't been able to do before. And when I was doing these things, it was always from the lens of, I am going to purposely fuck over my loadout as much as I possibly can to prove that you don't need the best of the best.
Okay.
And you don't need the meta. Now, does the meta have a place? Absolutely. I'm not stupid. I know that like there are things that are uncontested levels of better, like they're just better in terms of like their overall efficacy is for what they do, right? And each one has their own time in the spotlight, like rockets or grenade launchers in fucking Crown of Sorrow, or you know, the mountaintop recluse meta, like all that shit. Were they outliers in like their overall power? Well, duh, because pinnacle weapons are just a problem, but that's a totally different topic. But at its core, you can solo flawless a dungeon with a Kvostov and a harsh language and the green rocket launcher that you get from the starting Cosmodrome section. And because you can do that, it kind of removes, I guess, that well, not removes, but it challenges the idea of what the general player base seems to have, in that like, okay, you need to have this weapon and this weapon and this weapon in order to be a part of our group, which I have always despised.
Yeah. Do you have Yellowhorn?
Yeah, it's the do you have Gjallarhorn conundrum, right? And like, again, and that carried over in World of Warcraft too. Like, are you a demonology warlock? You know, like if you were an affliction, nobody fucking wanted you. So like it's something that I've always been kind of like annoyed with. But there's no real way to challenge it outside of proving it, because people don't like, you can say that you don't need this, but it doesn't actually connect until you see someone do it without those things. Right. And so that's kind of been my whole relationship with Destiny was doing hard mode content and proving to people that you don't need the best of the best shit to get stuff done, because so many people they convince themselves that they can't do these things because they don't have these tools.
Right.
It's like, well, you can do them, and it is possible. It's going to take longer.
Yeah, it might be a little
but
tougher.
It's possible. And there might be a little bit. There might be a bit of an issue where, you know, like you have to go a little bit more harder into getting over that hurdle, but at the same time, there are stepping stones in Destiny that do allow people to sort of navigate the power systems within the weapon sandbox, right? In like the free acquisition of certain exotics like Risk Runner, right? I stand by the fact that Risk Runner is one of, if not the most powerful primary in the game.
Oh yeah, just from like the damage reduction that you can get from
the damage reduction and the utility that it provides for just like the level of ad clear that it can get. Like, it can chew through fucking anything, and all you got to do is throw a grenade at your feet. Like that's the condition. You don't even need to really kill anything with it. Like you hit something with your feet and you're good to go, ready to rock and murder pretty much anything in in front of you. And so part of the dialogue for me has always been like, sure, you can do these things with no tools, but that's not the actual like reality of the situation. Most people, when they start Destiny, they get a couple of tools, and some of those tools are Risk Runner, or the Chaperone, or Sweet Business. And I haven't really done the New Light journey since it was reworked, so I don't know if there was anything that was added to it. But even within those few things, you do have a lot of agency to tackle certain obstacles. And I don't know, I just think it's important for people to recognize that you don't need the best of the best.
Yeah.
That's it. Because at the end of the day, it's a video game.
Oscar Mike asks, why is the concept of challenge in Destiny, in quotes, not based more on the builds you're running, but the difficulty of the content? So meta builds lower the difficulty, but it seems like people are averse to going off meta to create challenge. I think in part it's because Bungie has been like, you've got to be this tall to ride.
It sets the floor for like, these are the requirements. Like,
yeah,
you meet these requirements. This is the challenge requirements. If you can make it easier by running a meta build, that's what they're there for. They're there to make your life easier. I mean, that's why build crafting exists in any game, in any MMO. It allows you to do your job, or I use that not as an actual like official job, but like to do your job better. Whether that be to, you know, do damage, clear ads, survive. The builds are just there as a tool to allow you to meet the challenge floor. So I mean, yeah, meta builds lower the difficulty. That's just kind of that's just how it is. I think a lot of that too depends on the individual. Again, it's a mindset. So whether you want to be as efficient as possible, or whether you want to challenge yourself and have fun. I'll use that Oryx checkpoint I did on Saturday night with Bruno and Bergen. Like, Bergen was on a well warlock. Bruno and I were both on warlocks, but we were both on void. I was running nothing manacles, which people still are like, why the hell are you doing that? I'm like, hey, I get 2 weaken grenades. That means we don't have to run div. I got you through the whole damage phase, so I can chuck one at the beginning, I can chuck one halfway through, and we've got 15% weaken the entire time. And it's off meta because people would just be like, oh, we'll just bring a div. Like, div's easy. Well, yeah, you know, in a low man, you gotta kind of shift things up because every little bit, every gun matters. Every little bit of damage matters. Yeah, it comes full circle, that mindset of, you know, people wanting to be as efficient as possible. And if people just want to get stuff done, I mean, we're at the point we're in, Destiny came out in 2014, so we're rapidly approaching year 10. I think less and less people are playing the game for fun in a weird way. Less and less people are playing it for fun or because they enjoy like that aspect of the game, and more people are playing it for like, let me get my stuff and get out. Yeah. And I think that drives a lot of that.
I feel like another part of this is also like, we have a lot of higher tier players in Destiny 2. And like, a lot of you guys have like shown up on the show and like we've talked and everything, and like I feel like we have this raid race coming up on Friday. You're kind of locked into a handful of things in order to even be competitive for the race. If you're going for that number one spot. And so I think a lot of that kind of seeps into your mindset of like, well, I'm locked into this and I have to play this in order to achieve the thing that I want. And you're probably playing that a lot and you're probably practicing with it a lot. And so that's all you're seeing. When you're doing that, it's got to feel like you're eating the same meal every day, like for 3 squares, right? Like
it does.
Yeah. So
100%. That hits the nail on the head. I mean, for and I'll speak for myself, not for anybody else, but like, you know, when I'm rating or like using the day one as an example, like, you know, using the absolute best, you know, best in slot meta stuff as much as I can, because that is the time for it. That's, you know, for anybody that's going for, you know, either going for the belt or going for good placements, like they're gonna use everything they can. And then after the fact, it's like, okay, do I want to shift my mindset? Do I want to go back to having fun, or do I want to go through and get these done as efficiently as possible? So, you know, whether it's, you know, if you're running raid Sherpas and there's people, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever you think about it, there's people that are just trying to get people through raids as quickly as they can to puff their numbers or to look better, or there's people that want to do that because they genuinely enjoy helping people in the community. You know, that's when we start to see the mindset kind of shift a little bit and spread out a little bit. It's like, okay, how are we, you know, do you want to be that person that stresses out about sweating it out and using every single optimal thing you can, or do you want to kind of do well but have some fun?
Yeah,
because again, and I hate saying this because I do sound like a broken record, but it's true. It's like it's a video game. Have some freaking fun with it. Like, it's not, there's a fraction of a percentage of people that get paid to play video games in life. If you're not getting paid, chill out, like relax. It's not the end of the day.
How are you feeling about Destiny right now? Post like Lightfall, like during Season of the Deep. I know you've been playing a lot of variety stuff and like your home is in Destiny. Like you still play.
Yeah, well, I love the story, so I like to come back for the story beats of the content. I really loved Lightfall. I know that might be in the not being the majority in that, but I thought Lightfall was really fun. I really like how they're evolving the story. We are at the point of the storytelling arc where we have hit rising action and we are starting to enter the conclusion phase of the narrative, right? So we're going to start getting answers to questions, and I think that, you know, it's going to be tough. I'm glad I'm not in Bungie's shoes. It's hard to deliver on a decade-long narrative and have a conclusion that everyone's happy with. I think things are interesting from a narrative standpoint. I think that having the bad guy or the bad perspective in the game, or the one that we've been presented as fighting against the whole time, you know, the witness's entire orientation is to simply impose meaning on the universe, which is like, to me, it's a very bizarre choice, because usually the search for meaning is the thing in the journey that you bring back as an individual, and you're like, oh my God, I found my meaning and now I can like share it. So I'm super curious about where that's going. But in general, like I still love the game. I think it's fun. I love the gunplay as always. It's always what pulls me back in. Seasonal activity, super fun. And I'm looking forward to the next 2 seasons in final shape. And they're already saying these next seasons are going to start introducing characters and concepts that are going to transcend the conclusion of the Light and Dark saga. Yeah. So it's like, what's next? I'm curious, but I definitely say that I'm more invested solely on the narrative side now than I am like on the day-to-day gameplay. I'm burned out on that, but I think I was burned out on that a long time ago.
Ages ago.
You know, if you want to talk about things that I've grown in the past, 5 years, like learning to recognize, like, oh no, I'm not angry at Bungie. I am personally exhausted.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend that if you're a content creator, that you take a moment, take a beat, take a breath, chill out, get a 7-Up, like whatever. Like, but recognize that our opinions as content creators are, I might get blown up for this, asynchronous with a lot of the people who play the game consistently. I say this because I have friends who are not online at all for any of this discourse. People like some of my friends from St. Louis, these people that I've known for a long time at this point, they still play the game every day, and they are fucking ecstatic constantly with the new content that's coming out of the game. And they only play about 10 hours a week. And creating a product's about knowing your core audience. That's a core audience. People who play 10 hours a week, there's always stuff to do in Destiny. And that's for better or for worse, but I don't think most games are designed to be played for 80 hours a week. It's tough. All right. Sorry, Destiny community. I'm gonna make sure I turn off my Twitter for the next 5 days.
You'll be fine. You'll like we
I don't really care anymore.
You'll be fine. I've always maintained that we're the atypical players in all of this. Like we're constantly, when you're trying to make content out of the thing, you are going to see the cracks where you're going to see cracks where there are cracks and where you think there are cracks. And so like you're going to be loud about those things, especially when you make content for fun and money. It just happens. So I know you just said like the loot grind was like kind of burnt you out. You've been burnt out on that for a while, but what are you having fun with? Like what weapons in the game are you enjoying?
I mean, I always love when they pull in like the new exotic quest was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been addicted to the Quicksilver auto rifle. I have to force myself to play with other weapons.
Yeah.
So that's been my go-to since they released that thing. Even before they buffed it, I was like, I don't care if it's crap. It shoots rockets and grenades. I'm done.
Yeah.
That's good for me. I'm happy.
It's a Borderlands gun in Destiny 2.
It's definitely a Borderlands gun. Yeah, it's the most Borderlands ass gun. And then the synergy with the like strand subclass stuff, it was amazing. Yeah, I really liked it.
Incredible. Yeah,
I want Arc to be stronger, which is like probably not the thing to say, but like I want my little charge punch to I want everything to die.
Yeah.
And I got my perfectly rolled point contact brace to like prep for this season. I'm gonna be super transparent. And then the first time I fucking used that thing and it didn't obliterate everything in front of me, I was like, maybe I'll skip this season. So I really wanted to be Thor.
I've been bouncing around as a hunter, just smacking everything in the face and either going invisible or destroying everything in the room. So I understand your need for Arc to be powerful. What we have the reveal coming up in August,
right?
What are you excited to see? What do you want to see out of that reveal?
Is that the same day as the marathon stuff too? It's August 22nd.
Yeah, it's August 22nd. So they're probably doubling up that day, just like their own.
I would imagine the whole thing's going to be like a Bungie showcase. And since they're now a multi-IP studio, which is awesome.
It's great.
I think that by the time we get to the reveal, we're probably going to know a little bit more about the story, and they're going to set up the final conflict. That's that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting them to show us either how we're going to fight or run away from Zivu Urath, because I'm not. I mean, I'm fairly convinced that fighting's not the right play. Because if you fight, it makes her stronger.
She wins. Yeah.
So we have to learn how to operate in a different way. So I think that's something that is going to be coming out. And then, I mean, the final raid, they're probably going to show a preview of the final raid, which, selfishly, I hope that it's the raid that I've always wanted. I've been talking about this since Destiny 1, right? I want a raid where we go like inside the Traveler, which now seems like a thing that could actually happen. Like before, like in 2016, I was like, no, like we get in an elevator and like fucking go up.
It smells like vanilla in here. What's going on?
Like whatever, like and then it goes, you go up in there and then you get a buff and you can equip any exotic you want, and you just like, but it's only in the raid, in the raid, and you're gonna be the most overpowered, just like you're running you're running like point contact brace, and you're running, thunder crash helmet, and you're like like foil, like everything. And like you really have a good time. So I'm hoping for some crazy shit like that. I probably won't get my wish, but those are my hopes and dreams.
That reminds me of the ending of Legend of Dragoon. That game, you just got all the Dragoon souls. And
exactly. And you just become super god.
Yeah, you become super god. And oh man. So like, I think Salta Greppa is probably going to have something to say to you about the overpoweredness of the.
Everybody told me everybody told me wearing every exotic would break the game, and like every time I bring that up, I did a TikTok about it a while ago, and everyone's like, that the code in the game, they've said that it won't work, and I was like, yeah, I know, that's why it's a dream.
I'd say the real big one, which I didn't really wrap into what I'd said earlier because it's technically Witch Queen, not the seasons, but I guess I should have, is just the revelation that you hear from the worm larvae in Witch Queen, which effectively changes everything. Not only is it this incredible irony that the god of deception was created by being deceived, but it's also this amazing story beat, which, yes, technically it's retcon, but it's the good kind of retcon where nothing that happened before and nothing was said is discounted or disqualified. It adds context to it and creates good flavor. And you know what? I'm all for that. And it makes a great degree of sense with the new stuff that's been added. It gives perfect context as how things are feeling. But more importantly, it informs what's going to happen in the future. This wasn't just a throwaway line so that they could make Rourke more of a villain or make the witness seem like the true bad guy in the situation. No, I think that the idea that the Hive have been lied to this whole time is going to have huge implications. Even bigger is the implications that they were going to be chosen by the Traveler to be uplifted next. It sets the entire narrative of their people as the downtrodden who rose up and destroyed others so that they could no longer be downtrodden. It paints it in an entirely different light, because when you've been deceived like that and when you were always going to get helped, it makes it really clear all of a sudden that, you have been not only lied to, but lied to in that sense by the devil of all devils. You had this pathway you were supposed to take, and you were not even necessarily pulled away from it. You were dragged away from it without even realizing. It's devious. And I think that when that came along, realizing all of it, and seeing how that revelation played into the story was one of those moments where I paused and I would, am I allowed to swear?
Do what you want.
I literally said something along the lines of "This is wild," and what got cut from the T-slip was me constantly saying "Holy fucking shit" in the background. Because it's very rare that a lore piece comes along and just changes the dynamic of an entire established thing that in the lore of the game has been going on for millions, if not potentially billions of years. This is such ancient history that entire dynasties and ways of life have been baked into this thing. It's a cultural understanding for people in the Hive that is just not the same for any other culture. It's something that is so basely ingrained in them that they're willing to do all sorts of terrible things to themselves to uphold it. This totally changed who they are. If it wasn't for this thing happening to them, they'd still be called the Krill. Massive story revelations coming through of that. I have to say again, phenomenal stuff. It was so entertaining watching that pan out. As a separate note, I feel like in Witch Queen, we did need a big kind of we needed something that made it worthy of, being compared to the Taken King. Narratively speaking,
huge.
And between,
huge shoes to fill.
It was huge shoes to fill, and they more than filled it. Between Savathun basically getting us to feed her own memories back to create her master plan, and then us figuring out this revelation and sharing it with her in the final mission. Wow, just it's totally stunning. I'm really jazzed that happened, because it totally did live up to it. At least in my opinion, it did. Then again, I don't think I have rose-tinted glasses about the Taken King the way everyone else does. So, you know.
Oh, yeah. The Savathun of it all over the past year, with her being kind of off the board completely, where do you see her fitting in to the grand scale of things leading into Lightfall? I know we had a voice line from her in the trailer leading into this season. Do you think she's part of that quest that we see like in the last couple of weeks, or?
I don't know, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think that whenever Xivu is involved in the story that she's going to come up at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very odd, I think, because I think we know how this story ends, or at least has, as it's becoming a canned phrase, but has an inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
And for the story of Xivu and Savathun, I think it's very much the moment when the two of them step into a room with each other again, and Xivu hears about the lie. You know, I feel like in this moment, just like a confrontation, a true confrontation between Keitel and Callus is building in the background, I feel as though a confrontation between Savathun and Xivu is also building. And the reason I say that is because I feel as though if there's one person who Xivu will still potentially believe, it will be her sister, but more importantly, her sister who has abandoned everything about the darkness that forced her to lie to survive, and then has embraced something completely different. Her sister who now holds this knowledge and can speak to its veracity by saying, I was lied to, which, if you can imagine that coming from Savathun, is possibly the most powerful, humbling thing that she can say. And I think that the questions are, first of all, what leads us to that point? Mm-hmm. Because Savathun is a guardian, and her ghost has survived, which means that there is definitely a chance that she gets resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the context as well of, is she then our ally after having fought us, but then having heard about what happened? And then finally, the question of, if this does happen and her and Xivu do end up in a room together, what does Xivu do? Mm-hmm. Because there's a really good question about whether Xivu sits there and says, I don't care, I still have to war to survive, I am war, this is who I am, which in a way is very true to who she is on the whole, full stop. Or whether she sits there and takes vengeance for the lie, in which case that takes a sizable chunk of the hive off the board completely. You know, it's kind of the major story revelation that throws a huge spanner in the works. You know, this is like, to put an MCU spin on it, this is a little bit like Gamora talking Nebula out of working for Thanos. You know, this is a big deal. You know, it's one of the major lieutenants of the Witness being pulled off the board. And my question really about all of that ends up being not when that's going to happen, because I have to imagine that a conversation like that is going to take place in the future, but more, how do we get there? You know, it's I don't think going to happen in this season, because Savathun has just not been the focus of everything. The closest link we have to it, aside from Xivu herself, of course, is Osiris. And Osiris is only mentioned Savathun a few times this season, and not in any sense that seems to hint at the idea that she will be returning. You know, Bungie likes to tee these things up. They like to make it kind of obvious that something is going on. With Imaru not being teased, I don't think we'll see anything in that quest in the last couple of weeks. What I do think that we'll see at some point in a major expansion, maybe not Lightfall, but maybe something to do with Final Shape, we will see this massive story moment and a revelation that occurs between Xivu Arath and Savathun, and we'll see that moment pan out, and it will fundamentally change the balance of the war. I have to imagine that that's what's going on, you know?
Yeah. Like, that makes, logistically, that makes sense. Because they would have to face each other eventually.
And it also, I think it deals with one of the more important things of Destiny's story right now, which is, whilst people are being sorted into allies of the Witness and allies of us, there's also that third column that I talked about earlier, which is just wild cards, people we don't know about, you know? I'd class the Fanatic in there. I'd class certain aspects of the Nine in there. I'd class a whole bunch of different nebulous things throughout the system in there, such as the Aphelion, which we still don't know much about. I'd definitely class the Vex in there. Most importantly of all, though, and most obvious given the last few seasons, are the Lucent Hive, because they're using the light, but they're certainly not allies of us, and they are certainly no friends to the Witness. So you have this column of wildcards, and the biggest amongst them all is definitely the Lucent Hive. So whenever you have a wild card like that, I feel like there's a moment where you can sit and you can ask, okay, when are they going to do something? Are they going to come back and do a thing? Is that going to be the topic of a future story going forward? You know, if it's a wild card such as, say, Savathun, I imagine that that's something that has to be answered at some point in the future. Under what context? I don't know. But yeah, I have to imagine that something's going to happen.
Yeah. Max, aka at GGC Quick, had a question of what do you guys think will happen regarding Amaru in the future? Really interesting character, even though we don't see him much in game, and has been MIA since Witch Queen's campaign outside of patrols. Lots to speculate about considering his importance to the Lucent Brood and Savathun.
I don't know what will happen with Amaru. I mean, obviously, if Amaru comes up, then Savathun has to, as does the Lucent Brood, and that will probably be rolled into the same season or expansion or whatever it may be as Zivu and all of that stuff to do with the Hive. But I imagine if we do see Amaru coming forward, it will be in a context where we will be working with them. You know, if it was to be such a thing as a seasonal vendor, I could see Amaru being a seasonal vendor or at very least a seasonal character, because they tee him up constantly with the patrols and you see him in the campaign a whole bunch. Amaru is a named character to the point where something must happen. I'd really love to see them do something with him and Finch and our own Ghost, because there are moments at which our Ghost actually notes, like, hey, I think I remember Imaru before he resurrected Savathun. I think I know who he is, but as a ghost, and he was always kind of a jerk, you know? And I'd love to see that relationship get developed and, you know, for Finch to be kind of the linchpin between the three, and then, yeah, I don't know. I'd love a season of just sitting there with us and Ikora and those two ghosts coming along as well as our own, and just watching three tiny drones just go at each other and babble and bob it, and us and Ikora just sitting there and watching in the corner being like, oh my god, please make it stop.
Okay. These guys clearly have history.
It's like, do you want 15 minutes in the room? Should we
You guys need any water, coffee, anything? All right.
Duffel
we'll be
bag.
on the outside. Just let us know what you need. We're here for you.
Yeah. If our ghost comes along and says, I take it all back, crush him, I don't care. That's going to be one of those moments in which it's like, oh my god, please. I'd love it, but it's also a moment of like, oh no. We need them probably. I don't know. The story definitely needs them.
I mean, I know it's probably unfair to continue to compare expansions, like the big yearly expansions. It's probably unfair to continue to like compare them to past releases, because let's face it, for me, and I'm pretty sure for a fair amount of the community, Forsaken was the best DLC that they'd ever released. It was top notch. It was devastating. Obviously, we lost, Cade.
Mickey Mouse, yeah.
Yes, Mickey Mouse.
Cade 6 is Mickey Mouse's Destiny. I won't be taking questions at this time.
Oh, I will be asking questions later. Thank you.
No. I get that. Mickey Mouse. Cade to Destiny is Mickey Mouse to Disney.
Yeah, you see Cade, you're like, oh, Destiny. Like,
yeah.
And like in the back of your mind somewhere is floating Nathan Fillion.
Yes.
And, like
100%.
And so that they killed Mickey Mouse during Forsaken. And so we've kind of been in this era where it's been a little bit more grimdark. I would say that it's branched off in ways. Cade almost needed to go away in order for them to expand the roles of the rest of the cast.
There was definitely, they had to they had to kill someone off, and they had to kill. I would argue, did they really have to kill off the best liked character? What? Anyway.
That's like the interesting commonality, like in this game, in like the gaming community as a whole, is like the seeking for connection and trying to find people who want to play kind of the same things as you, as well as teach other people how to do activities. I know with Lightfall coming up, we're getting an LFG system added into the game.
Yes.
What are everybody's feelings going into Lightfall, knowing that that's on the way, and how do you feel like that will affect the game overall?
I'm very excited about this. If we're talking about sort of toxic and egos and everything like that, I want to get up there. I want my score, and the fact that other people have to leave their experiences on you and sort of rate you sort of after activities. From what we've seen, it looks quite well, and you can make up and it's kind of fill in the gaps in between what they're saying and kind of theorize how each little part's going to work. But I think this is something that both for PvP and PvE, we've needed for a very long time, to have some sort of social ranking system. And straight away, I hope there's no way that you can sort of farm it and it can be sort of unbiased and cheesed and all that. But I would like it to be very genuine, and I want to get my name up there. I want to go for sort of high sort of placements when you go to see those sort of leaderboards and everything. And I want to see sort of other people that I know, do well already. And I want to see them up there. So, whether that's a bit egotistical of me, but it's something to sort of strive for. And then when you do these guides and these Sherpas, and you put it out on your stream and you put it out on as content, people can look at your name and they'll see that it the card fits. So.
So yeah, how is that supposed to work? Is it like the new like guided light or guided games thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. They're adding the LFG in for activities for everybody. They're also adding in a commendation system, which looks like it is going to be working in tandem with that LFG system. So as you get activities done, it'll rank you up in different ways, and people can leave certain commendations on you. I don't have I used to have a list of the ones that I saw for the Lightfall reveal. I can't find them. I didn't prepare that in depth for this, but like there's but I know several of them are for like, hey, this person was helpful, or it was fun to run with them, things along
so that's that only line. Useful if you're using the LFG thing in game, because if that's the thing,
I hope so.
I hope so. If it's like that, I probably won't be using it much. Like I'm not, if I'm on stream or helping people, I'm going to be streaming and I'm going to be helping my community for the most part. And I won't be jumping into a LFG like in-game thing to pull people from that when people from my community are absolutely going to need help during Lightfall. Yeah. So like if there's no accommodation system for that, I mean, are people going to think I'm trash at what I do because I have low accommodation? Like, I don't understand. Like in that regard, I'm not too fond of it the way that it is, if that's how it is.
My understanding
I won't be using it.
Was that it was after any activity you played with someone, no matter what activity you play for, where you have the post match report and everything, it's going to be there, and you're going to have every individual person there. So whether you sort of make a thing, but I don't think you could. I think from what I saw again, very quickly from when they showed it, was you can't just keep playing with someone and keep doing it. I think there may be a cooldown on when you can do it, or maybe you never be able to do it again. So I think they have stuff in place from what I saw, but
so you couldn't just farm it.
You can't farm it. and it's not just locked to that. I'm sure, like, please correct me if I'm wrong, someone somewhere, but from what I saw, it was any activity.
Even if you made a fire team yourself.
Yeah.
Like
I believe so. Yeah.
So then it probably can be farmed, because that's just how they farm the raid report with their Sherpas, just doing checkpoints over and over and over. Unless you have to do a full activity, we don't know that detail yet. But
well, and if it locks out your account from being able to rank somebody multiple times within a certain period of time, that could also be a thing too. But it's a system that we're not entirely sure.
I think that it's really not going to be a system that might be used by people who are known, or people who, maybe it is more of a system for the LFG, so that who to avoid, who on LFG is helpful, who isn't going to treat you like garbage. I think it's really going to be helpful for people like that in that way. Not really necessarily even for myself, because I don't, run on, I do LFG a little bit, but maybe more so for the people out there coming to streamers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It could be a way to sort of funnel people towards this new side of Destiny. That there are rewards for making these placements and getting these certain tier of commendations. Just reading up on it just now, there's split up into different categories: ally, fun, mastery, and leadership. And then you've got commendations that then, I think they said 13 unique commendations available underneath each one of those. So,
oh, you found the list?
Yeah, I can put it in.
You found the list.
Just a quick sort of thing. Yeah, it's, it could be a way for them to try and shift the focus of, help more people out through this way, and will sort of reward you. And is way I could see it going. So,
Dan, what are your thoughts?
I am very torn on it. I kind of feel very similar to a lot of the other people here. As far as the LFG system, as far as the history of Destiny as a whole, the whole outlier for the majority of the community has been this dialogue of, I would be more in tune with the end game if there was in-game matchmaking. I would be able to play this more often if there was in-game matchmaking. I don't like to only have to go here. I don't like the third-party matchmaking system and all this stuff, which I 100% agree with. It should be in the game. The LFG system that's coming to the game is a good addition. However, I do already see multiple flaws with the system, either in its ability to be abused or in its ability to just not be used at all. I do feel that if the LFG system fails, the one complaint that the majority of the community has, as far as I can't do GMs, I can't do raids, I can't do trials because it doesn't have matchmaking, is now gone. And I'm curious what the conversation will be around this stuff, because the majority of the community's one complaint is gone. Now, that being said, we don't know how the LG system is going to look. Even though it was announced back in August, it could be drastically different in February.
True.
Just like anything else. So I do think it's way too early to have an idea of if it's going to succeed or fail, because they could come back in January and tell us, hey, we're going to change it dramatically. We're going to make it a lot more simple. What we said in August with the Lightfall showcase just didn't work out. We found this to be a lot more simpler, or whatever. Or they could go more in depth. I don't know. It's way too early to tell. In developments, we all know they announce one thing, they find in testing it doesn't work out, they change it, and then we get a totally different thing. So I do think it's a bit too early. as far as myself, I don't think the system's going to be very useful for someone like myself, but that could be also a detriment because, like has already been said, if you look at raid report is abused dramatically as far as CPs, as far as if you look at like the people Sherpa, there are ways to abuse that system. I am 100% certain that there's a very, 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 very high chance this system would be abused. However, the people that are making it are previous Destiny content creators themselves. Like I think T-Rex is one of the people that helmed this system. So that knowing T-Rex himself and knowing he's one of the world's first raider, he has played Destiny since its inception as well, and he plays WoW and Final Fantasy, and he knows those systems very well. I am, for the lack of better terms, I am putting a lot of my faith in this system and my understanding and respect for him. You know, I think T-Rex is going to make a very, very, very good system, considering who he is, considering he knows a lot of the game because we've all seen him, play the game. You know, we know he's a world first raider. He has the experience and the resume to back it up. That being said, there's probably, just like everything else in Destiny, there's going to be a way people abuse it. Or there's going to be a way people that don't use it it'll get tossed to the side like guided games. I just don't want to see LFG system to be tossed to the side like guided games. I am very hopeful for the LFG system and the commendation system, but I have my fears. But we'll see. We're still like 6 months out.
That's a very genuine take and very optimistic of you. Really, it's really cool.
I mean, I've thought about it a lot, and I don't talk about it a lot because a lot of people either are for it or against it. But I've spent a lot of time thinking of it and all of the pros and cons and what'll come from it, what might not come from it. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, Daniel, your whole whatever is going to be all up in smoke because of it." And I'm like, no, not really. If anything, it's a help. It's a help to the system, either for the people that either don't like streamers, because there are some, or don't, like whoever. And I don't think my position in the community is going to be, or anyone's really, is going to be changed from having a low commendation rating because I don't engage with the system as much as someone else. Just like my raid report is pointless to someone who engages with it way more or abuses it. So I'm not threatened by it. If anything, it's a help to me. So as long as people think of that way, because I've seen a lot of people worried or taking it too seriously. One, is just a game. Two, it's, if anything, it's a help to those that either can't be helped by streamers or communities in general. Think of it as a help, not a detriment. So.
But I do fear that. I'm sorry, but I do fear.
Oh, go ahead.
I do fear that what LFG would do in game with the matchmaking is people complaining that they keep getting put up with terrible teams, just like how solo is with PvP. Yeah. It's just like, oh, I always get terrible teams in GMs. I always get terrible teams with raids. And most of the time it's just you, but that's neither here nor there. Like
they don't want to hear that.
Yeah, they don't want to. They don't want to hear that. But it's always, they're always blaming somebody else, and I feel like that can be one of the downfalls to the matchmaking for endgame content, is because they're getting paired up with people at their skill level or maybe below their skill level. Because I don't think they're gonna put like skill-based matchmaking and PvE activities with.
Oh dear God!
Even though they could,
I think it'll be region. They'll just make it connection, someone close to you.
Absolutely,
that's the safest bet.
So that I see that as being a problem, the biggest problem, honestly. But other than that, I don't think the accommodation system. I don't even think nobody's gonna judge people based on their accommodation system. If it's high, they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, it's so high." But if it's low, I don't think anybody's gonna be like, "Oh, it's low." Like, nobody's gonna say that. I don't think.
Here's Johnny has a question. How does D2 keep building his fan base?
You said it wrong. You said it wrong. Come on, dog. At least say it right.
What?
Here's Johnny.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. All right. Hold on. I got to text Jenny real quick. Tell him
it's crazy. It's crazy.
All right. Here's Johnny asks, how does D2 keep building his fan base by bringing in new players? How to make it before new light friendly, or how to make it more new light friendly, but also keeping the veterans happy with changes to a game they've been playing for years? Because there's definitely been some changes that have turned some vets away.
Well, how much time do we have? Because
like how do they keep bringing in new players?
Yeah.
How do they keep bringing in new players? Even those changes that they've made along the way have pushed away vets. Like where? Yeah, exactly what Tony said. Where's the middle ground?
Mm-hmm.
So resilience is a really good example of that, right? Because resilience makes it really easy conceptually to just jump into in-game content and just, okay, that's the damage resistance that I need. Okay, that's what's going to make it like palpable, easier, doable, as opposed to, more complicated, multifaceted mechanics that you're going to have to grasp in order to, do the same sort of thing. So the middle ground, because resilience obviously turned a lot of like vets off with how easy it made the in-game content, especially for folks that knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
I think knowing what's meta, but also, I mean, I just do things like, 'cause like I said, I do like solo GMs and stuff like that, low man raids. I recently finally got the rest of my 2-mans done. Like that's what keeps me interested. Like that's a hard answer or question to answer, I feel like, because I'm not a new player, so I can't really speak for them. But I mean,
but you're making your own challenges, right? Like you're taking an activity
I'm pretty much
and making
my
your own
challenges.
difficulty.
If I couldn't do that, if I just did helps all the time, I might go crazy because I feel like I might go crazy. So I think that's really what keeps me going. Is if I get really tired of just doing the same help over and over and over again, like I'll make my own challenge. Like and if I want to play with friends, we'll do like HUDless raids and make like drinking games out of it sometimes. Like kind of like we add our own modifiers to keep the game interesting, or we'll ban certain weapons or mods, I guess. But that's kind of how it I feel like that's the middle ground for me at least.
Yeah, and just a wider middle ground. I don't know. I haven't thought about this question like a lot, but I guess the two things that stick out the most for me with regards to a middle ground is one, making sure that you have that really accessible content, that Dares of Eternity, those, strikes, things that people can just hop into, not because necessarily they want something like easy or chill like myself, but because it's just accessible to a newer player. It's something I know that I'll be able to complete. I know that, it's something I won't have to like dig deep into build crafting or my vault in order to just, get to the end of it and get my rewards. Right. So that's like one end of it for me. The other end of it is like these mechanics that are in the game, that continue to kind of like build on each other, or just multifaceted mechanics, that might be included in in-game content, and you have to kind of recognize the majority of that, implement some sort of build or strategy in order to overcome that in-game content. Like just how like raids have easier encounters towards the beginning, tougher encounter obviously towards the end, but those encounters generally like build conceptually, on like the easier, more accessible content, and Destiny 2 should be like that too. Like those should be the building blocks, and maybe like, this strike right here, like the only mechanic you really got to remember about this particular strike is that there's a champion, and there's a particular type of champion, and you need to equip this mod, and like that's how you end up overcoming the boss for this particular strike. Another strike, there's another element, maybe it's overcharge, and so by doing a bunch of strikes which are relatively easy on its own, like you end up learning these multifaceted parts of the mechanics that are necessary for the in-game content. Then once you get to the in-game content, then all this stuff. You have the building blocks for it. You may even have a couple builds that, now I know how to like put these builds together into one. I know this is what I need to equip, and this is what I need to equip, and this is what I need. Like it step by steps it out. That's something that I've thought about in the past with regards to kind of like helping newer folks, but also keeping that multifaceted, that challenging in-game content that requires a lot in the build crafting, a lot in the strategy to kind of know and complete.
Next week is week 6 of the season. We're at the halfway point. You have achieved some pretty cool things in the time that since last time we spoke. I believe you went through and you soloed Spire of the Watcher, blind, flawless, HUDless. Was it on Master?
No, but people keep adding different things to it.
Yeah, all bows. That's the constant that I know of you. It's always all bows. It's always HUDless. It's always flawless.
Yeah, so I have done solo, flawless, all bow, no HUD, every single dungeon. Duality's the only one that I did all of those on the first full clear. Duality was something else. Yeah. But otherwise, for Spire, I had gone through, I do all of the other ones. Well, I do all of them. Day 1, I go in spoiler free, don't know anything, solo with all bows, and I have my HUD on generally until I don't. But I go in and then complete that solo first and then go back for the flawless afterwards. And this time I went through, got it my first time for day 1. So it's the third dungeon that I attempted day 1 of. And I finally got it done in the 24 hours and like 22 something. I think I had an hour and a half left. And then I did it without artifact mods. It's kind of my rule that I do it, all of them, without artifact mods, any of the runs, and with exception of like the resist mods, because they're not going to make a huge difference.
Right. Outside of like, there's only one mod that I think probably would have made a difference on that run. But depending on how like your experience grind had been, like it may not have been too beneficial, or you probably wouldn't have had it. It was the
I didn't have it unlocked. No.
Yeah. It was the one for solo. Yeah, solo operative.
I learned the reason why I had decided never to do artifact mods on at least my very first run of solo, my first run of flawless, solo flawless, is because the very first dungeon that I solo flawless, I should just say soloed, with exception of Shattered Throne, that was a murky, weird time in my life. That solo. But when I really got into dungeons, soloing dungeons, I ended up doing my first solo of Prophecy with Oppressive Darkness. Okay. I don't know if you remember that mod. Very long ago. It just was crazy for void grenades. I could throw the void grenades. It would just do a crazy amount of damage. And that helped me get through it in Prophecy with all those ads just so much faster, so much easier. And then when I went back to do it again without Oppressive Darkness, I had to completely change the way I was playing.
Yeah.
My play style, what I was using, how I used the different perks on my bows. It just made a huge difference. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make it so that I can use the same build going forward with minor tweaks if I want to, without having to rely on seasonal mods. So yes, it puts me at a disadvantage, but in the long run, I'm at an advantage.
Right.
I'm not relying on classy restoration like a lot of other people trying to go through after Season of the Haunted, duality. Hey, I'm going to solo it. Oh no, I don't have classy restoration.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry about that.
So what would
I like to make things harder than they are.
Oh, and we'll be getting to that soon. But like, so what would you say was like what would you say was one of the toughest bits of that dungeon overall in your flawless run? Like, what was it a boss? Was it jumping puzzles and like physics, or was it
the fans?
The fans, yeah.
The fans. Yep.
That
was definitely single-handedly sweaty hands. The fans.
Well, did you try to like jump through the fans, like as they swiped, or were you hopping through the little vents on the side?
So I was trying to get to the vents, but I had to time it correct. Then I had a couple panic supers in there. And on one of my attempts for flawless, I got through the first set of fans.
Yeah.
And I was like telling chat, hey guys, just be careful. FYI, there's a fan on the top. So when you jump down in there the first time, don't jump up or it'll kill you.
Yeah.
So I get through that and I was like, oh, thank goodness. I only have one more set of fans to go into.
God.
I end up jumping up into the fan.
Do as I say, not as I do.
I'm just like, oh my God. People are like, oh, you're really good at this dungeon. And I'm just like, yeah, totally.
Sure.
I'm great. I'm awesome, guys.
On what run was that?
I don't remember. The fans got me on at least 3 of those attempts. Maybe more.
I know in my attempts for solo stuff, folks in my chat are just like, yeah, just keep going through it until like you get the other encounters down, and then you can like get the patter of like the rhythm going. Do you find that helps you out in your runs?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yep. I know exactly what's going to happen, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to handle it. But because I've done it so many times, I could walk through it, doing the dishes, talk my way through it. Like I can just picture it. There was one time that I was in the strike playlist at some point before I had completed duality, and I was just trying to talk through it with chat, and I know exactly how many steps I need to take in a certain area, where things are going to spawn, what type of shot I need to do, what bow, what I need to take advantage of, where an orb is going to fall for becoming charged with light. I mean, I do it so many times. I know almost exactly what's going to happen. The hardest part by the end of it is either a bug, which was the case in duality, or in the case of Spire, it's me. I am the boss at the end of it.
Sarah, you touched on something a little bit earlier about like all the changes kind of like happening all at once, or we keep getting repeated changes over and over and over again with very little, with almost like a whiplash of time between them.
Yeah.
And I know in the coming seasons we have a lot of changes. In the coming season we have a lot of changes, especially when it comes to like trials, changing entirely different mode to Dominion. Are you guys hopeful that the changes that they're making will make for a better Crucible experience in seasons to come? Or are you worried that it'll be more of the same, even communications wise?
Michael looks like he wants to talk. Go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and just say that I feel like I'm still hopeful that the way things have, I want to say improved. I know maybe not everybody agrees with that, but the constant like updates to things that are a problem. Immortal is probably the thing that stayed around the longest, and we're like, okay, like this is going on a little long. But outside of that, everything's been addressed relatively quickly lately, and I am hopeful that sandbox will continue to improve, especially with all the more connection-based stuff we're getting. I'm really excited to have the pure connection-based, no lobby balance experience, just random. Maybe you just might make it to the lighthouse sort of thing. I personally don't like Dominion. I really like the old school elimination playlist. I know it's getting stale. I know that it doesn't make people push anywhere, and that can cause for stale games. And they're trying to amp up via the game mode. I just like that anything can happen in elimination. You can fight anywhere in the map, and I like that randomness. But Dominion, I get that they will have more control over where the point is, where to push players, and how to make a more engaging experience. So I'm curious to see how it plays out, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it.
Okay, here's something that's going to make you a fan of it. People can hide from your fusion and elimination all round long. They can't in Dominion.
Yeah, but it's not as random. That's my whole thing. I know.
Well, exactly. You'll get more kills.
I guess more predictable.
You get more kills.
I don't care about the more kills. I just care about random. Like, the more variety in my experience, the better to me.
Listen, I have an agenda. No. I have an agenda here. I need more slow-mo clips of you melting people with like this fusion that nobody fucking knows about, and I just need to see that on screen. Okay, so I'm trying to sell you Dominion so you can get those clips.
We will have more of those next season.
I see. I still feel like I haven't convinced you, which is wild. Because, anyways, my take on this. See, I don't think Trials alone will save Crucible, because we've done that song and dance since season 10, right? Remember when they came back with Season of Wordy? Oh yeah. Anyways, don't want to rehash that, but basically, like, Trials, it's very much its own separate thing. It brings in its own population. It has an independent set of problems that don't reflect onto the rest of the Crucible. The thing that will get me hyped for Crucible is evidence that they give a shit. So things like, and what makes people give a shit? What makes people care about stuff in Destiny 2?
Chasing it's guns and armor.
Loot.
Yep. Yeah.
Loot.
Chasing something.
And we've got an emblem and another emblem and a transmat effect. And probably the sniper to end all snipers next season. We need some more. We need more. And until we see that, and we see, I'm not going to say like better communication, but just like communication that seems to account for community sentiment amongst players whose playtime with the Crucible is higher than most, is my opinion. Because I do think everybody's voice matters, but this whole like Stompies thing is really rubbing me the wrong way. And I know that anybody who spent any little decent amount of time in Crucible will say to you, Stompies is not a problem.
It's not.
It takes adjustment. It costs an exotic slot to use. You're giving up way more broken stuff like Wormhouse Crown, Athrus's Embrace, Dragon Shadow is still a thing.
And Dragon Shadow got nerfed too, but yeah.
But it's still strong. It's arguably as strong as Stompies in terms of movement when you get it right. But like if they had that conversation with some, like if they had a real PvP summit, I don't think there would have been a single mention of Stompies. But here we are. And I feel like there's a huge disconnect between what Bungie wants from the Crucible and what the players want from Crucible. And until there's evidence to suggest that those two sides are converging, I'm just going to sit here and vibe, I guess.
Yeah. To touch on the Trials stuff, I'm looking forward to actually having the point objective, because I do prefer quicker games personally.
Nice.
However, I would say that these slower games that we're seeing are probably more so due to the weapon meta shifting to more range. With sniping getting buffed again, pulses are incredibly strong, pretty much all archetypes, and we've got some really good scouts in the game. There's just bows are still really good. Like, we've just got a lot of ranged weapons. So I would say that that's probably more so where that's coming from. But I also love the elimination style. So it's a bummer to see the elimination style go due to the weapon meta shifting that way, and them solving it by changing the game mode.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see if it does create some quicker games. And they said that they think it will kind of increase like weapon variety, build variety. I disagree. I think that it's going to just basically, it's going to be kind of what we've seen with points. so far is the bubble, Wells
ability.
I mean, warlocks are going to be so good next season. So, so yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. I'm curious to see what happens. And then yeah, I do agree with Nomad. I think the Stompy thing is kind of silly, and I would say that a lot of people just aren't using Stompies anymore because they don't know how to build into AE. And now that they're taking away the AE change, I don't know. I feel like the same amount of people are still going to be using it, and it's still going to be good. Like Sep just said, he's going to unbind his dodge, so like he's still going to be cracked with it. Okay, like the top players are still going to find ways to be extremely mobile and good at the game, and taking Stompies out is not going to fix that. And I think that those are the people that Bungie's trying to nerf, and it's not a big enough portion of the player population for it to be an issue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like I just an average player putting on Stompies is not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Like it is not. If anything, sometimes those people are nerfing themselves because they can't control the movement. Like it's not. It just doesn't feel like it should have been reworked that way. Like, but yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead with your point. And then
maybe we'll see a little bit more variety on the hunters generally, because they won't be using Stompies, and we'll get to see all the lovely, lovely little ways where hunters are 10 times more worse now.
All the abilities. Yeah.
Young Ahamkara Spine, Athras' Embrace, Wormhusk, Bacchus. Hello.
Yeah, Bacchus.
People sleep on that thing. That's gonna be horrible to deal with, but hey, I'm for it. Oh, it slows you, by the way, if you get close and you have an aspect. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But it is. I do hope Bungie will see this and they'll say we made a mistake here. At the same time, though, I'm kind of glad that Stompies are going to be, not necessarily an afterthought, because I think people will still find ways to be useful with them. But people are going to start looking at other things more, which I'm a big fan of. I'm always a fan of variety, but I just don't agree with the reasoning for the Stompy change. I think it was one of the things that made the least sense, because look, if you're trying to enforce a traversal limit, if you're trying to nerf movement speed and crossing point A to point B, or even just getting enhanced movement period, then why didn't Dune Marchers get a speed nerf? Why didn't Peacekeepers get a new speed nerf? Transversive steps and getting a speed nerf. And hey, grapple is still there, even though that's a grenade charge and that's a different tuning circumstance and all that. But it the consistency wasn't there. The wording made it seem like it was this big oppressive thing when it probably just wasn't. It was just hard for people to just move up.
All you darn controller players really struggling. People jumping over you. Oh no.
It's also one of those changes where obviously you have your gremlins on Twitter going like, well, you're a top player, obviously it's easy for you to, dude, look up. How hard is that? Like reasonable people will be able to see that and say, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't look up as much as I could have, but that's a weird reason to nerf something.
I agree, especially on a game that has so much vertical movement. Like it's a game that encourages that. Our maps are built literally for vertical movement. Like, why are they suddenly like vertical movement is bad? Stop. Like,
the main thing that I want to echo there is the whole not nerfing the other movement exotics at the same time, mainly because I was just doing a quick search through the exotic list for hunters, and every single exotic that increases your movement by that 6.25% also requires something on hunter, like Dragon Shadow. You have to dodge. Like there's just so many of those where
there's
Frosty, you have to
use
exotic. Your ability. Yeah, and then for every other one, like Transversive Steps or Dune Marchers or Peacekeepers, like the Peacekeepers requires an SMG, but still there are all these free ways of movements on the other classes, and there is no free movement thing on Hunter. So I don't mind personally changing the game. Like that happens all the time. I've it's like going to your favorite restaurant and having them take away your favorite meal. You can get this other thing that's very similar, has the same sauce on it, but it's not the exact meal you like. That's fine. We'll adjust as a player. But to have them take away just the hunter one and not the other ones, when it's a part of the game that's really fun, is that movement stuff. And that's why everyone is so upset. That feels a little strange to not just even the playing field, especially on the movement class that everybody thinks of as the movement class hunter, whenever every other class has such strong momentum abilities like shoulder charge, even with the nerf, shoulder charge, and warlocks dodging like faster. Like everybody can get places faster except for the hunter now. I mean, you can just don't use your dodge, but it's more limited than the other classes is my point.
It's more it's a sacrifice, yeah.
Oh man, Jamiroquai.
That's a reference you'd get because you're
totally. Well, also, no, I mean, I don't know how much you know. I think I've been very vocal about this, so I'm sure you've seen it because as we were talking before the show, it's like we've never really had a conversation out loud, but we've interacted and crossed so many times throughout other Destiny stuff. Is like I'm always throwing up all these other things. You're throwing up all these other things of like this is a piece of culture I'm interested in. This is like an opinion I have, and like it is just so perfect that we have all of these little like how do I say it, like a moment bomb of like the minute you get close enough to it, it's like this proximity thing that sets off, and you realize as it opens up that like, oh, we're connected in all these other ways, all these other pieces like line up in these really nice ways. And it's I'm not trying to like call out Tony a bunch, but whatever, like physics puts up his name is Ill Physics. He's like interested in physics and science and astronomy and stuff, and it's like he always puts up this content that I love, which is just like stuff about astronomy and wait, which is the good one? Astronomy.
Astronomy is the good one.
Real stars.
Astrology is CoStar app, which I pay way too much attention to.
Yeah, like getting that stuff is like one of the ways that me and my partner initially connected was they taught at college. They taught astronomy and like space stuff, and that's something that I'm interested in. And like, so we connected over that a little bit, and we mostly connected over Destiny, but it was like, it's one of those things where it's like, as the moments unfold and you realize like, oh, like this is great. Like we're connected through this thing and this thing and this thing. And it's like, you know, that I find that to be something that I mentioned previously is like, I find that to be a really telling thing about folks in the Destiny community or in any community. The Destiny community is just one that I'm like neck deep in right now.
Yeah. Same.
Right. Is like, there are people who like show you who they are and you can tell, and it's like, I'm not gonna with them, but like then people show you who they are and you're like, oh, these folks, this is the one, they're like me. Like,
my people.
We're the same. Yeah. And it's not hard to find them. I recognize that it's a different sort of level of difficulty for different people, neurodivergency and whatnot, for like actually connecting with folks, especially online, especially with like that medium. You were saying before, like, you get nervous about starting these sometimes. Like, I don't get nervous about these conversations like at all. I don't get nervous about meeting someone online at all, because to me it's like so much of the pressure is just lopped off. Like a lot of the in-person stuff, like I'm in the middle of like having dealt with this cancer thing, also trying to get figured out like what is with my brain. What's this thing been doing for 42 years, 41 years? Like, and it's something that working with Guardian's mental health and doing stuff, especially over the last like 3 or 4 years, really trying to get into like, okay, what is my head doing? And is it something that other people's heads are doing? And then it sort of cracked open wide this understanding of like, oh shit, other people's brains are doing worse. Like, it is making them feel bad a lot. And I am like, I'm fighting that tooth and nail and getting past it most of the time. But like some people get through halfway through the fight and they're like, I'm just done. I can't get all the way through this. Right. So it's been a big thing that's like really, I think, changed my perspective in the way I think about being online and being around people. And like, it's like I was talking about, I know I'm kind of rambly and we've gone in 15 directions, but like,
this is perfect. This is fine.
The LFG server that I help run is about being cool with those folks so they can have a good time. And it's also about people who are very sort of neurotypical and spend a lot of time on that server and hang out together anyway. But like, there is a very particular thing that we have tried to do, which is to make it so that pretty much anybody can come there and work through if they need to. in a safe space, like I'm not great with people on being on microphone. I'm not great with call outs. I'm not great with learning this raid. Like when 4 of you are talking, I'm like, it's buzzing in my head. Right. Yeah. So we try to make those work, and we try to like use every time that the content fluxes up and like has another group that comes in, has more people, has more activity. We try to use that.
Gentlemen, I think there's some dinner that needs to be had.
Could you guys hear my stomach?
Yeah, I can, like it's picking up on the mic, and I don't know if I can edit that out. So
nah, it's about to be talking more than I am.
So I just want to say thank you guys once again for being on. I miss you both.
I'll miss you too.
Me
too.
When it
was good catching up.
Yeah, talking to you guys like once a week for like 4 years, 5, like how many years?
And not an insignificant amount of time.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I miss you guys. So, do you guys have any final thoughts before we like get to like popping out of here?
I mean, absolutely thrilled to be on here with you tonight. It's been far too long, and you're right. I mean, we were doing basically a Sunday show for the better part of 4, almost 5 years together. It's a long time.
Yeah, man.
That's a long time to be working together, and I have missed the conversations. I may not pine for the days of having to go back and do all the work that was entailed with Planet Destiny. But one thing I absolutely loved was getting together and just chatting with you guys, because this never felt like a job.
Yeah.
And I know there were a lot of times when we were like, oh man, Sunday's coming around and we got to stop doing what we're doing to go get on a show. That always dissipated.
What is there to talk about this week?
Yeah. Oh God, how are we going to figure out the news and all of that? For me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that always dissipated about 35 seconds into the actual call. Because I just found myself like having so much fun talking to you guys. Like, oh God, it's like just sitting back and hanging out with my friends. That's what the podcast was for me. It was never really work.
Yeah.
It was sitting around, hanging out with my friends, and every time we finished it, I always sat back and thought, man, I'm glad we did that.
Yeah. The only time that ever felt like it was a job was when everything was breaking on OBS, and it was like, oh shit, everything's breaking. Nim's face is no longer appearing on the screen. Why is that happening?
Disappears. I freeze. At a perfect time. Those are the times.
It's fun. It's very easy to branch out in conversations with y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Nim? Any final thoughts?
On?
No, just in general. Just in general.
How you feeling about the stock market right now, brother?
Right.
My name's Danfinity. You can find me on the Twitter, in the Instagram, and the TikTok at DanfinityGG. You can also find me on Twitch 3 days a week, twitch.tv/Danfinity, helping Guardians with endgame activities. If you'd like to support the show, remember to rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Anything you say helps us in the algorithm. If you'd like to give a couple bucks a month to help keep the lights on, head on over to coffee.com/Danfinity. That is ko-fi.com/Danfinity. All the links are in the notes for the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you find what you're grinding for.